How's that? Good evening. It being 6 p.m. on April 2nd, call the Webster Board of Selectmen's meeting to order and stand with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Chairman Jolda and Mr. Dugevich are not able to make it tonight. First order of business is the warrant for the May 7th, 2018 election. And we're told by our town clerk that this has to be read, so I will give it a quick read. Town warrant, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Worcester, SS. To either of the constables of the town of Webster and the county aforesaid, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby required and directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Webster aforesaid, who are qualified to vote in elections and town affairs, to meet in the United Church of Christ, 4 Church Street, for precincts 1 and 2, and Webster Senior Center, 5 Church Street, for precincts 3, 4, and 5, in said Webster, on Monday the 7th day of May, parentheses, it being the first Monday in May, close parentheses, at 7 o'clock in the forenoon, then and there to act on the following articles, to wit. Article 1, to choose by ballot all necessary town officers for the ensuing year, viz. 1 selectman for 3 years, 2 school committee members for 3 years, 1 school committee member for 1 year, 1 regional vocational school committee member for 3 years, 1 town clerk for 3 years, 2 finance committee members for 3 years, 2 trustees of the public library for 3 years, 1 board of health member for 3 years, 1 assessor for 3 years, 1 housing authority member for 5 years, 1 housing authority member for 2 years, and 1 redevelopment authority member for 5 years. All of the above named town officers to be voted for on 1 ballot. Question number 1. Shall this town approve the charter amendment proposed by the town meeting, summarized below? This amendment would make ministerial, clerical, minor, and moderate revisions to the charter as detailed in a document entitled Recommendation of the Charter Review Committee - grammar/punctuation minor and moderate changes, on file in the office of the town clerk and available on the town's website at the town's website. All as voted under Article 2 of the October 30th, 2017 special town meeting. Question 2. Shall this town approve the charter amendment proposed by the town meeting, summarized below? This amendment would change the offices of town treasurer and town collector from elected to appointed, provided that the incumbent elected treasurer and town collector would serve for the remainder of their elected terms, and thereafter the positions would be appointed by the town administrator. And further, the amendment would replace the elected Board of Assessors with a chief assessor to be appointed by the town administrator, as detailed in a document entitled, quote, Recommendation of the Charter Review Committee - Treasurer and Collector, close quote, on file in the office of the town clerk and available on the town's website, and listed the website. All is voted under Article 3 of the October 30th, 2017 special town meeting. Question 3. Shall this town approve the charter amendment proposed by the town meeting, summarized below? This amendment would decrease the number of members on the Finance Committee from 15 to 9, with a reduction in size of the Finance Committee to be accomplished by attrition, as the terms of the incumbent members of the Finance Committee expire, as detailed in a document entitled, quote, Recommendation of the Charter Review Committee - Finance Committee, close quote, on file in the office of the town clerk and available on the town's website listed. All is voted under Article 4 of the October 30th, 2017 special town meeting. Question 4. Shall this town approve the charter amendment proposed by the town meeting, summarized below? This amendment would increase the size of the Board of Health from 3 to 5 members, with the 2 new members to be appointed by the town administrator, as detailed in a document entitled, quote, Recommendation of the Charter Review Committee - Board of Health, close quote, on file in the town office of the town clerk and available on the town's website at the town's website listed. All is voted under Article 5 of the October 30th, 2017 special town meeting. Question 5. Shall this town approve the charter amendment proposed by the town meeting summarized below? This amendment would replace the Water and Sewer Advisory Board with a newly created 5-member Water and Sewer Commission appointed by the Board of Selectmen with greater responsibility for the public sewer system and quality of the public water supply, including setting water and sewer rates, as detailed in a document entitled, quote, Recommendation of the Charter Review Committee, Water and Sewer Commission, close quote, on file in the office of the town clerk and available on the town's website listed. All is voted under Article 6 of the October 30th, 2017 special town meeting. All polls close at 8 o'clock in the evening, and you are directed to serve this warrant by publishing an attested copy thereof in a newspaper published within the town of Webster at least 7 days preceding the meeting. Hereof fail not, and make due return on your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of holding said meeting. Given under our hands this today in the year 2018. That being the reading of the warrant, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Jen, would you pull the board, please?
Selectman Bork?
Yes.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes. Next on our agenda is a vote to authorize the treasurer to file an application under the State Qualified Bond Act, and I think we'll have the town administrator explain this one.
Yeah, so the State Qualified Bond Act is a program the state allows municipalities to use their credit rating to issue our debt. And by doing such, we can use their credit rating, which is currently under Moody's, it's an AA1, and ours is currently an A1. So they're 3 steps higher than we are, so they will get a better interest rate than we would on issuing bonds. So we have a meeting set up with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board for next Wednesday, where we would have $24 million worth of borrowing items to be proposed, and we would use the state's interest rate instead of our own. Quickly, I'll go through some of those. There's nearly $5 million for the Park Avenue School project, nearly $900,000 for the Bartlett Junior Senior High School repairs, $7.5 million for the library, $750,000 for the wastewater treatment facility SCADA project, $234,000 for technology upgrades to Bartlett Junior High, $700,000 for the Webster Middle School renovation, $1.5 million for the tower truck, $700,000 for the water filtration plant design, $244,000 for technology devices, $330,000 for the LED streetlight conversion, $962,000 for SCADA equipment for the pump stations, and $5 million for refunding currently issued bonds under water and sewer. So if you allow us to do this, we'll go to the state next week and issue these debts in the near future, early this spring. So, any questions?
The only question I would have is there a cost? If we were to do this on our own, it would be a certain cost to do, and if we do it with the state's rating, would there be any additional cost?
There's no additional cost, so they don't charge us anything to go through their process. We just get their lower interest rate.
And then we have to take this vote tonight to authorize you to act on behalf of the town to seek the state's
Right.
rating, which in theory should
Be
save the town money.
right.
Any other questions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so I'll read the vote that we have here that's been voted that the treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Chapter 44A of the General Laws any or all of the bonds currently authorized and unissued by the town, or notes in anticipation thereof, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board may require for these purposes.
So moved.
Second.
Jen, would you poll the board, please?
Selectman Bork?
Yes.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes. Thank you, and good luck, Doug.
Thank you.
getting
Oh,
this.
they did invite any members of the Board of Selectmen that want to attend. You're welcome to. So next Wednesday at 9 a.m. downtown Boston. if you're interested, let me know. Also, any members of the Finance Committee are invited as well.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
The last item before our tri-committee meeting is discuss the draft host community agreement and gift agreement with Curaleaf, Massachusetts. And we've been provided a copy of this. Doug, do you want to maybe go over some of the changes to this or the reason we're actually looking to?
Yeah, so currently we have a host agreement with Curaleaf for their medical cultivation facility on Old Worcester Road. And so they would like to switch over to provide cultivation for both medical and adult use marijuana. So they, if you go through the document, they have offered, currently we get $50,000 for just the medicinal facility. They have offered us $100,000 in the first year and increasing to $150,000 for years 2 and 3. And then for years 4 and 5 of the agreement, $200,000. And I've surveyed other communities, and this would be a very, I don't want to say generous, but it would be an appropriate amount that other communities are receiving that would be right in line with everyone else. And also in here, there is a clause that if Curaleaf opens another cultivation facility in another town that's more generous than this one, we would automatically get that rate as well. So some other items in here. Currently, we have a moratorium on marijuana, so adult use marijuana. So right now, they cannot grow until that moratorium has been lifted. They are requesting that the planning board hold a meeting and approve new regulations that can be adopted as soon as possible. They would like it before July 1st. At the latest, it would be at our October special town meeting. Then
That's not within our purview tonight.
no, it's not. So that's just but signing this document does not mean that they're allowed to start cultivating for adult use.
Is that, Doug, is that because we had taken the town meeting vote, which, kind of prohibits anything from happening?
Right, exactly, yeah. So that moratorium is set through December of this year, but the latest we would have regulations and a new bylaw at the October town meeting to approve a new one. As far as other items in the contract, they mirror almost exactly the old agreement, so they're nothing in particular. One thing they have offered also to donate $25,000 to charitable organizations in the town. And then also we will continue to be able to tax the facility and any personal property at the facility.
I noticed in there too, that was clause 7, that if something happened with regards to our inability to tax, if they get some kind of tax exempt status, we have a pilot
Yep.
agreement, a payment in lieu of taxes agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Bork or Mr. Miller, have any questions on?
Through the chair, please. To the administrator, I think the administrator and I talked about this a little bit because they would expand from medicinal to also recreational, which would expand their profit, which should expand our feasibility profit.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm looking at this, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought it looked pretty good.
Yeah, so currently we get 50,000 only for medicinal, so, 4 times that to get for recreational.
I think the fact that there's a most favored nations clause in here, which says if someone gets a better agreement for Curaleaf, we automatically step into that. Because one of the questions was, are other towns, for instance, maybe getting a commission? And Doug, I think you
Yeah,
said
so there are, in the new adult use marijuana law, communities that have a dispensary can tax it to a certain percentage, 3% local option tax on it. But since this is just a cultivation site, we can't have a local option tax on it.
And one more, if I may, thank you. Through the chair, to the administrator, I think the town meeting and I know the board has just restricted it to a growing facility, not distribution outlets along the street.
Yeah.
Am I correct? That's in
Right,
it.
so yeah, this is only for
Just to make it clear
a
to some
cultivation
folks,
site,
yeah.
yeah. So any bylaw that would allow or disallow a dispensary
Mhm.
would have to be approved by town meeting.
And we were a little bit on moratorium because we didn't know what the state was gonna do at the particular
Right.
time with deadlines.
And honestly, they just came out with the regulations
right.
like 10 days ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's appropriate that we had the moratorium in place. We didn't want to rush into any decision
Exactly.
for the May town meeting.
So to Mr. Miller's point, there is a clause in the agreement that disallows any dispensing in the town.
But just
As-
to make
as
it
was
clear
agreed
to
to.
some people, right? Thank you.
It's been reviewed by town council?
It has, yes.
The only other question, Doug, that I had was, there were questions when the town initially agreed to this with regards to security of the
Mhm.
Webster Police Department. If they're comfortable with it, any security issues at all that were there?
No, we haven't had any issues with the medicinal growing facility. So again, the police department will be allowed to monitor and have access and recommend security features if they feel they're needed.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
Jen, would you poll the board?
Selectman Bork?
Yes.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes. Do we have any other business?
So since we have a few minutes, maybe I'll give a brief update on a few projects.
We can't start our next meeting till 6:30.
Yeah, so we got our management letter from the auditor over the weekend, so that will be on the next agenda for April 9th, a week from tonight. A lot of the issues had, well, I think they were impressed with how many issues we had started working on, and they feel like we're working in the right direction. We also have been meeting with the new water superintendent and our water engineer to come up with a list of roads that we want to reline and clean and reline. So next week is also the day we're going to sign that the May town meeting warrant. So one of the items will be approving $500,000 of water retained earnings to clean and reline water mains throughout town. So we'll have Greg give a presentation next week on that, as well as at town meeting to inform everyone of what that will look like. Couple other things, the library is constructing on schedule, at least according to the new updated schedule. So we're looking to open in June. We received some of the computer equipment, and the furniture is going to be delivered relatively soon, so it's moving along well. Trying to think if there's any other items that need an update. Anything the board wants an update on?
The only question I would have was on the water, if as part of that presentation, if we could, show where the complaints have been, maybe the trend of the complaints, where they tend to be, what locations in town, how many, et cetera. So-
Yeah.
They usually keep pretty good track of that. I know Doran did.
Yep,
I'm
then they
sure
have
I
been
know.
tracking them.
Yeah.
And the last I had was numbers through February, and 2018 was looking really good, but 16 and 17 were pretty flat, though.
But unfortunately, the flushing program is about to.
Right, so yeah,
Unfortunately, because
exactly.
That may raise
That is what will create most of the issues.
most calls. Okay. If there's no other business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Jen, hold the board, please.
Selectman Bork?
Yes.
Selectman Miller?
Yes.
Selectman Becker?
Yes. And we will re-adjourn at 6:30. We're all set.
So did I.
Good
Sister
evening,
Jean?
everyone. It being 6:30, we are going to call to order the meeting between the Finance Committee, School Committee, and the Board of Selectmen. I'll start with the Board of Selectmen and open the meeting up. We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum of the school committee, so I will call this meeting of the Webster School Committee to order.
The Finance Committee also has a quorum, call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order.
I think tonight Doug's going to start us off.
Yeah, so we are in relatively good shape for the fiscal year 19 budget. As we look at some of our neighboring communities, tomorrow Dudley Charlton has an override, and we know that Douglas is looking at an override, so I feel that we're in a good position, at least for fiscal year 19, as we look forward to fiscal year 20 and beyond. I think we need to have some serious discussions tonight on what we want to do going forward. But to start off, I'll just go briefly over what the fiscal year 19 budget looks like. So if you want to hit the next slide. Sorry if you can't see this, but it is, briefly I'll go through our changes in revenue and then changes in expenditure. In total, we have about 1.4 million in new dollars to spend. So, typically if you take away some of the shared expenses that cover both the school budget and the town for insurances and debt service, things like that, the town is only about 30% and the schools are about 70%. I think that surprises most people when they learn that, is that the schools are so much more. So they should be receiving the bulk of the new dollars anyway. But if we look at this, a couple of the big changes are one, the Proposition 2.5 state aid, and then a couple of smaller drops in revenue is the demand fee. Last year we tripled that fee, which seemed to have some sort of deterrent effect, so we're no longer having as many people pay late, which is a good thing, but also the last couple quarters is when that comes in the most, actually the last quarter, so we may see that uptick to our original estimate of last year. And does anyone have any questions on our overall revenue as we go forward? Okay, do you want to switch that over? So our total municipal budget is $45 million, almost 45 and a half. This is a 3.1% increase over last year. So the changes in expenses, the health insurance is kind of the one that we've been playing with a lot. So this actually shows a decrease in the budgeted amount of health insurance. This is because we had talked about moving to the Group Insurance Commission. We have been working with the unions, and currently they don't want to move to the GIC. So what we agreed to for fiscal year 19 is that they were due a employee premium holiday, and they said they would forego that so we could balance our budget, and then we would re-meet in a few months to again review health insurance options for fiscal year 20. I think this actually works out best for everyone, because if we were to switch to the GIC mid-year, the employees would have to pay the deductible on our current Blue Cross Blue Shield plans and new deductible on any new plans that they would enroll in. So it saves the employees from having to do that, and keeps all the employees happy, and our budget is still whole, so I think it worked out well for everyone. Some of the other big cost drivers is retirement. It grows at 6% every year. We had debt service was one of the bigger ones this year, with almost $250,000 increasing. One of the good news items is the dispatch assessment went down. Last year we received a grant of about $100,000. So that helps to decrease those costs. Another one of the big drops is the DPW electricity. So that's in anticipation of us switching our street lights over to LED, which will use a lot less electricity. And the other drop there, gasoline prices have remained relatively low, so we dropped the kind of the cushion out of the budget. And veterans benefits have actually decreased the past couple of years after skyrocketing for the 3 years prior to that. So any questions on changes in expenses? You'll notice the school's on there for $843,000. I'll let Monique and Ruth Ann go in detail if they want to about that.
The LED lights, we paying for that, or is National Grid? Change over.
Yeah, so in total cost is about $400,000. So we got a $100,000 grant from the state to pay for it, and then with our green communities money, we're using about $150,000 of that to pay for the streetlights. So the remaining roughly $150,000 the town will be paying for, but it's basically a one-year return on investment. Any questions? Okay, you want to switch it? Okay, so I did mention this about the health insurance. We will look at all options available for July 1st of 2019, including the Hampshire Council on Government, which has Blue Cross Blue Shield. If they would accept us, that would kind of solve all of our problems because we'd save a significant amount of money and we could stay in our same plans. If that doesn't work, some of the other options are staying with Blue Cross Blue Shield, going to Maya, which is a fully insured plan. And then we're also reaching out to other communities around us to see if they'd be willing to go in a joint purchasing group. Because hopefully if we buy in bulk, we can get it at a cheaper rate.
Doug, up to this point, what is the reason why HCOG will not accept us?
Just our claims have been higher than their claims within their system, so if adding us would increase their premiums, and they don't see any need to do that.
Do you have any idea what our current fiscal year claims look like?
So fiscal year 18 is relatively good. It's about where it was running about $250,000 less than projected.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the past couple of years, HCOG has said, oh, they're getting slightly better. Ask us again next year. So hopefully that trend continues and they'll actually accept us one of these years.
Doug, that 250,000 less, that's less than what the auditors had come out when they had done their work?
Yeah, less than what our consultants, GBS, had originally said would be the total amount needed to fund both the employee side and town side of health insurance.
And you predict that the fund will be fully funded this fiscal year as well as next?
The town's appropriation to it?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. So fiscal year 18 and the budget for fiscal year 19, when I include the employees' amount that they're not going to take as the premium holiday, if I include that, then it'll be fully funded.
We're not legally obligated to do that premium holiday?
We are not, and we're working out an agreement that they will all sign and say that they agreed to forego it. And that they will lose that equity in the fund. This will keep us at a self-insured status, which one of the things we definitely want to look at and, if at all possible, is move to a fully insured program. But rather than joining mid-year, I think it does make sense to wait till a full plan year, and those start July 1st, so I think that makes sense for us to do.
Capital wise, taking into consideration school has more employees than the town, who's hitting the insurance the hardest?
It's all based on claims, so.
Who's hitting it hard?
So I don't know who's who, if they're a town employee or a school employee, I just get numbers, so.
Yeah, it's protected information.
Right, HIPAA doesn't allow any
Yeah.
personal information. You just get a total claims amount for the town.
Yeah.
But suffice to say, if the school has 80%, you would expect.
More,
80%.
yes, that's why I said the capital wise.
We can't necessarily make that assumption, though.
Might be higher, might be lower.
Do you want to switch the slide? This is just a boring slide that shows comparisons from 17 through 18 and the recommended for 19. Okay, so, wow, that's really hard to see from back here. So, this is the forecast moving forward. So, FY19 is balanced with the school request being fully funded at I think it's 4.2% increase. And so when we look forward, if we don't change any of our assumptions and the schools continue to grow at 4.2% and we stay with our current health insurance situation, we would have about a $1.2 million deficit in fiscal year 20, $1.4 million in fiscal 21, 1.6 in fiscal '22, and about $2 million in fiscal '23. So those are bad numbers, and big enough that we need to find serious options for fixing those. So can't fix those with doubling the dog license fee. That's not going to get us enough revenue.
No more dogs.
Yeah. Do you want to switch it? So here are a couple of options. So one, talking about health insurance reform, is we need to finally come up with a consistent plan that we can all live with going forward. Second is looking at, do we need to grow as much? The third option is adjust our pension schedule. So this is a little, I don't know. So the way, right now, we have a currently fully funded date of 2031. By law, we can extend that to 2040, which I certainly wouldn't recommend. We may want to consider moving to 2035. However, the current law says if you aren't going to be fully funded by 2031, you can't have your pension assessment grow at less than 4%. So we're currently growing at 6%. So even if we did extend it to 2035, we'd still have to grow at 4%. So the savings between the 6% and the 4% is only $67,000. So that's not going to do a whole lot for us. The other option with the pension is to regionalize and go to the Worcester Regional Retirement System. The town of Athol did this a couple years ago, and when they did that, they had a $700,000 savings in their first year assessment. That's because they were roughly the same percentage funded, but they had an earlier fully funded date. So theirs might have been 2031, and Worcester Regional is 2035. So that's what brought that down. One problem, though, is that if we were to join Worcester Regional, their rate grows at nearly 10% every single year. So even if we were to save, say, $800,000 our first year, that's going to grow at a faster rate. So we may relieve some pressure in the next few years, but it's only going to put more pressure on us in the mid-2020s. So I have asked an actuary to give us a payment schedule on, well, we have it for if we remain with our own retirement system. So I asked him to look at it if we were to join Worcester Regional, what that would look like, and how much our assessment may drop if we were to join. So hopefully that comes back and they're positive numbers. If not, then I think the only other option would be to look at an override for the community. If you want to switch to the next slide, this is just some scenarios I was running. If we assumed a smaller growth rate for the school department, and trust me, I'm not picking on any one department over another, but a 3% increase for the school department and staying self-insured, that would decrease our projected deficits. So there'd be under $1 million going forward. If you want to switch to the next slide, this is the school department growing at 3%, and we were able to move to the GIC. This puts us at roughly a $500,000 deficit in years going forward. That's all the slides there. So, with that, I did have the schools at a 3% growth. The town budget for those future years, next year, it grows at 6%. That's because a lot of debt service is coming onto the budget. And then the years after that, it's less than a 2% growth, just to stay with the status quo operations. So at this point, I guess I would like to open up, say, what of those options do we think are available and practical for us to move forward on? If there's any that we don't think are going to work for us and we just want to drop them now, how do we want to move forward?
Well, Doug, you had mentioned Athol in their move over to Worcester Regional. It seemed like that 700,000 came about more from going from a 2035 or
yeah, like 2030.
They were 2031,
yeah,
and it went to a 2035. Do we have an idea of what that would
Right, so if we did do
help
that,
us?
that only saves us $67,000
That
a
is
year
the
because we have to continue funding it
The
at
4%.
4%. One thing, I mean, that dropping $700,000 sounds great, but the present value dollars is definitely gonna be costing the town more if we were to do that. So currently our retirement system is, I think, around 54% funded, and the Worcester system is only mid-40s. So joining their system would probably have a bigger drop than $700,000, but we're also joining a system that is less funded than our own, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense either.
And the retirement plans themselves are all promulgated by the state. In other words, we have an investment board that handles the retirement investments
Right.
for our town. But if you know, we attempted to do any kind of changes structurally, not to current employees, but to future employees, that's not something we can do.
No,
We as a town could do.
yeah, no, the pension system is defined for all public employees throughout Massachusetts, so it's exactly the same. So, yeah, whether we're a local system or a regionalized system, we all will pay the same amount in, and we'll all get the same amount back at the end. And so, yeah, we have no control.
So that's not an option.
No, so, right now, I think, employees pay 9% plus an extra 2% on the first 30,000, something like that. So, yeah, we can't change that and say, oh, new employees, they have to pay 11% plus 2%. Yeah, there's no ability to do that.
Or a switch to a defined contribution plan,
Yeah.
defined benefit plan.
Right, yep, that's not an option available to us. When I look at all these options, I think we have to actually pursue all of them to get anywhere close to the.
And I'll state the obvious, because that's what I'm pretty good at. The reason why every community around us is looking, almost every community around us is looking for a potential override is because the state education system, local communities can no longer afford the state education system the way it's structured. For those that are unaware, a couple of years ago, the state put together the Foundation Budget Review Commission. And it was actually, if anybody followed it, I think they did a great job. It was a bipartisan group. They spent months assessing basically the foundation budget that is used to calculate what the state provides to local towns and cities and towns was created in 1993. Now, there's been some adjustments since then, but needless to say, the economy and the educational expenses have changed dramatically since 1993. The Foundation Budget Review Commission came out with a 40 or 50-page report, and they identified that basically the state has been underfunding public education by about $1.5 to $2 billion, and that's a billion with a B, unfortunately. The difficulty is, where do you come up with even half of that, $750 million, to start to properly fund the state public education system? Finally, we do see some movement on Beacon Hill with regards to not only trying to fund some of the recommendations in the Foundation Budget Review Commission report, but also just try to fund some of the components of the current budget foundation formula that have not been fully funded for many, many years. At our last school committee meeting, we did have Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna attend. They are both in support of a letter that's on Beacon Hill right now with about 45 bipartisan legislators' signatures on it, trying to get additional funding in this current budget. Obviously, we won't know for sure until the Senate, the House budgets come out, and then they finally come together and it goes to the governor's desk for signature. So no one likes to talk about it. We tried an override a couple years ago, 2 years in a row. It failed miserably, unfortunately, but the way the current 2.5 tax structure is, the expenses, and again, it's primarily from the schools because we are the largest department. The three areas that the Foundation Budget Review Commission found that were woefully underfunded by the state were employee benefits, primarily health insurance, transportation, and special education costs. Special education costs, there's really nothing we can do as a local school district to control those, because obviously any child that is in our school system that legally, morally, and ethically needs additional services in order to learn, we need to provide that, and we should provide that. There is a circuit breaker formula that we receive every year, but unfortunately, that's been woefully underfunded, even in our current fiscal year. My biggest concern moving forward is we may be at a point after this fiscal year where we no longer have any reserve in our circuit breaker fund moving forward, which is it's not just a school problem. Obviously, the town funds the school department, that ends up being a town problem. And, you know, if a child moves in tomorrow and their IEP states that they receive an out-of-district placement that costs $100,000, we now have to absorb that cost. So I thank you for bringing it up so early. Obviously, we're supposed to be talking about FY19.
We're all set with that one, so don't worry.
He's thinking we're all set, but we'll see. But, you know, the major issue that Dudley, Charlton, Douglas, Oxford, most of the communities around us that don't have a significant commercial tax base, the major issue that they're struggling with are the costs in education. I do want to publicly thank our administrative team, because for the first time since I've been on the committee this year, I think they've done a very good job at identifying not only what they need in new staff. For years and years and years, it was just, what do we need that's new? But they really took a close look and saying, what we currently have, is it working? What we currently have are those positions and programs currently working. And there was a significant savings in changing staff and cutting some staff in certain areas that offset some of the additional increases that we were looking for. So from my perspective, at least, you know, as a parent and a school committee member, I agree, we're probably gonna have to do a little bit of everything in order to bridge a very significant potential deficit gap, but there's no way we're gonna come close without some type of override.
And I think you hit it right on the head in order of priority. I think the health insurance is a big, and I think it can derive some decent savings for both, I think, employees that choose wisely and the town. I think going on down, I think the school department's done a great job. The town has done a great job balancing the budget this year. But we are faced with some things that are very real and going to hit us in 20 on for a few years. So I think everything on this, in that priority, is probably something that has to be dealt with. And I think, you know, the override in unsaid in all of this, in this slide, is I think we've got to get results out of the water system. I think if we can start deriving some benefit of the efforts we're putting in, and people are more satisfied with the water, and maybe an override will have a more palatable effect on the town. I think if we continue to have dirty water and we ask for an override, I think that's going to count up one another. You know, be a problem again without a solution.
Well, I think we're not going to discuss it tonight, but Doug mentioned at the previous Selectmen's meeting that that'll be on the agenda to at least reinforce what the plan is, what the priorities are, and what the $500,000 that he talked about today for the next approval at the next Selectmen's meeting, you know, will be prioritized for. So I would hope so too. The concern I have is those first three items. You know, if you're going to get $500,000, maybe out of those, you're still stuck with item number 4, which is the override.
Oh, yeah.
So it isn't a pretty picture. And I would say on the fiscal year beginning July 1st of 18, there's still, wherever there's opportunity to save money, that's a good thing to do. We don't want to spend it down to zero, because our reserves are not where they should be either. So
What are our current reserves? Do you know off the top of your head?
It's like 1.2 million.
And what is the recommendation for a community our size?
Yeah.
double, at least
double what we currently have, basically.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Years ago, they said that the school was forced to identify special ed students in a certain way, and there were quite a few that weren't, and currently or shouldn't have been classified special ed. Did they change their formula over the past few years?
I'll let Mrs. Gogan address that. I'll just, from my perspective, again, not an educator, there is a very rigid process that's based on state law, where a team is put together, they identify what the needs are of that student, is there a true disability? It is a very extensive process that the school department goes through, both initially as well as a minimum on an annual basis for every student that is part of special ed. But I'll let Mrs. Gogan get into the details because she's much smarter than I am.
Thanks. It's a federal law, and we are obligated by law to test students and follow the process that Mr. Hurton was just informing you about. It's not a willy-nilly process. In fact, we run frequent refreshers for our administrative team, and we just left a training session with an attorney with all of our administrators to go over the federal regulations, the do's and the don'ts, to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. We are obligated by law to provide every student free education, and we have to provide them the accommodations and modifications that they need. And the special ed process is one piece of our world. We also have 504s, which we talked about at the last meeting, to cover students for accommodations, and we follow all of those processes. And with me coming into town, it's I've been here for 7 months. It's a great time for me to be asking lots of questions about our processes, and I think one of the things that I've been able to do as your new superintendent is come in and ask those questions, and then look and reassess how we're using our funds, and then reallocate the staffing and our resources to make sense. And our current budget before you, I think we're asking for 9 new positions, but we've reallocated staff, and we're eliminating 11, and those 9 positions really, I think, are going to cost us about $158,000, which is pretty good.
I'm not questioning the school. What I'm questioning is the method that you identify special ed. It was said here in this room years ago that special ed was being identified, special ed students were being identified in a very lenient manner and should have stricter or stringent process to do it. I asked if the process has been increased, there are less special ed, or has the process stayed the same and we still have the same amount or more special ed?
From our perspective, the goal isn't do we have less or more. The goal is are we meeting the needs of the individual students that we serve? And so we have to determine if students qualify for special education services. And if they do, by law, we are mandated to provide those services. So I know our special education numbers are high. We do have students that have significant needs, but we are like many districts in Massachusetts where special education costs and identifications are increasing.
Do you, again, sorry, do you identify children with the behavioral problems as special ed?
There's certain criteria. There's definitely certain criteria.
So if I might add, the criteria is promulgated by the federal government.
Yes.
And it's not something that we just get to choose.
No.
Here's the criteria. If the student meets that criteria, then they are identified that, as special needs, special ed, special assistance.
Yes. And everything's documented.
And, Mr. Fenimore, I think as a parent a long time ago who thought he had a child who qualified for special ed and then soon discovered that he didn't, it's obviously a very emotional and personal process for parents to go through. So I think at times people may think one extreme or the other. Some may think the district does nothing because in the case of that particular parent, their child may not have received what the parent thought they should have. And then there are those that think the district gives everything away.
Well, I never accused the school of not doing anything for special ed.
Right.
I am a special ed parent, and I was in special ed back in the 60s and here in the town of Webster in the 70s and 80s. And it's just curious, we had some developmental problems with children in school, they're special ed. But I didn't think emotional and problems that they bring in from the home was considered special ed. But apparently they are.
There are many different things that impact a student's ability to learn. And the IEP process, you have to have a documented disability, and it has to impact your ability to access the curriculum. And so there's a very clear-cut process. Our job is to educate all students. And I will say that in the 7 months that I've been here, we have dedicated teachers, dedicated staff, and everyone is really concerned about the kids here. And they're following all the procedures and practices that we need to be following.
Is there any way we can educate parents? I'm serious. Is there any way we can educate parents?
That's a fantastic question that if I give an answer might get me in trouble.
Well, I think the teachers face that every day, and they probably do their very best
Correct.
to try and do that very thing, is to help, through the children, educate the parents. When I tried to compare, a couple of years ago, I tried to compare the amount of the school department side of the budget with regards to spending on special needs, special assistance. I was amazed at how high that percentage was compared to surrounding towns. So that always threw me a bit, but it's because, you know, we have so many children in need. But I can't quite remember the number. I thought that was over $1 million of the budget, as compared to when I looked at, you know, Dudley Charlton, or looked at Oxford, they were half, or maybe even a third of what we spend on it. And I didn't realize until tonight that there's a set of federal guidelines that we have to follow. It's not just some decision
Oh, it's
that
not.
a teacher sees something and they're concerned about.
It's a very complex, very complex, rigid process that the staff goes through with the parents to identify, as Mrs. Gogan said, is there a disability? If there is a disability, identifying what the additional services are that child needs. But the reality is, roughly 60% of our students are identified as high risk. Now, that's not special needs, that just identifies, so 60% of our students are identified as high risk. I believe it's about 21% of our students are actually on an IEP. Individualized education plan?
Yes.
That's the document that they create for each individual student. So I don't know if 21% is high compared to districts around us. I actually sometimes get more concerned. The difficulty sometimes we struggle with is that 40%. Because we've got 40% of our students that are identified based on various criteria as being high risk, yet they're not receiving an IEP. They do receive 504 plans, et cetera, but that's actually sometimes the bigger challenge for the teachers and the staff, is working with and educating and supporting, and you know, what our staff goes through on a daily basis is mind-boggling to me, about not just being teachers. You know, they're friends, they're supporting, they're feeding the kids, they're helping them out there. That's what they do every day.
Parents.
Yeah.
No, I was just even saying, it was a few years ago, just the transportation, the separate transportation was phenomenal on both sides, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Now, again,
to accommodate
right.
every student.
One of the things that bothers me, and I know it bothers Mr. Atlas, who is recently retired, is the regional school districts receive currently 75% of their transportation reimbursed from the state, and we receive 0.
Right.
I know, again, the admin team for years has tried very hard to adjust bus schedules and times that schools open up. I believe the savings, that the big change was about $300,000.
It was 300,000,
Yeah.
that was about, excuse me, I'm sorry, that was about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.
But again, if a student is going to a program that's outside of Webster, we are required to transport them,
You're
and,
right.
you know, that does become very expensive depending on where they're going. So I bring that up obviously because it's not just a Webster issue. You know, we're a little fortunate this year, and then obviously the projections, we're gonna be in the same boat that a lot of the communities around us. And, you know, obviously, we will, moving forward, we will always work within the constraints of town meeting. That's what town meeting is for. They're the ones that determine how much money we all spend. But if next year, we're looking at even a 3% or less increase, you're talking about now you're looking at significant cuts. You're not looking at how can we enhance our programs at ag, and we're now really looking at the kind of cuts that unfortunately, our friends in Douglas have had to go through in other communities.
If I may just say one more thing about special education. It is a wild card for a lot of schools, and right now the governor's budget is proposing to only reimburse circuit breaker by 65% instead of 75%. That difference would be about $90,000 for us. So we've written letters and spoken to our legislators to try to get the support to change that, to increase that funding back up to 75%.
And not that there's a guarantee, but
Right.
one good thing that Senator Fatman and Representative McKenna mentioned at our last meeting is the revenues in the state level have continued to be higher than expected. December was phenomenal, and that may have been in part to people prepaying their taxes. But a lot of people thought it was going to decrease dramatically in January and February. It has not, from what they shared with us. So there's no one knows for sure until obviously the House Ways and Means and the Senate Ways and Means come out with their proposed budgets. But that's one of there were probably 6 or 7 items on this letter that had been put together to the chairs of the House and Senate Ways and Means committees. And that was one of them, to increase the funding for circuit breaker, to try to get additional funding for transportation, to get the per pupil expenditure. I think the governor's budget is $30, and they were looking for $100 per pupil,
Yes, yeah.
which wouldn't help us that dramatically. Ours
No,
is,
because we're over anyways.
what is, do you remember what ours is?
I want to say 100.
Is it 100?
I want, off the top of my head. I'm not
Right.
sure. But I also want to add that we're always looking for ways to save in transportation, especially special ed transportation. Or looking to other communities. Who can we ride share with? Who's going here? Do we know of anybody going to this school? We call up their school saying, can we share a ride with you, split the cost? So we're continuing, it's never just a flat out cost. We're always looking for ways to save, even on regular ed transportation. Crowded buses at the school, do we need to add a second bus? Well, is there any way we can shift the routes, or we have one route that's doing 2 runs? So we have them there first, so they can pick up a group of kids, go drop off locally, and then back circle around to come up and be the last bus to pick up another group of kids. So we're always looking for ways to save versus add. That's our first approach. I was thinking that we do still need to address this issue, and the chances for an override, in my experience in the last 2, is that there's not a whole lot of trust. Doesn't have a whole lot of trust in so we have some positive outcomes.
Yeah,
So,
and unfortunately, I agree that the water is probably one of the biggest issues, and the filtration plant's not gonna be completed from, 14 months from now, so that's not gonna help us.
You have a problem.
Even when we do get the,
You have a problem with the filtration plant. It's only good for one well.
Well,
What do we do with the other well if it goes bad?
Yeah, that has more than enough capacity to provide water to the whole town.
I'm gonna throw out something real dumb. Why don't we do an enterprise fund for the transportation for the school?
Who would pay for it?
An enterprise fund would come, again, it's just the parents that are sending the children, any parent that has a child in school would pay for it. It's like water and sewer.
It's probably against state law. You do that for schools if you could. I mean, if you don't have a child,
I know
you'd want to do that for the schools, but I wouldn't think state law would allow that.
They allow towns to charge for school transportation to the parents. What's the difference?
Well, I would say that we service a lot of people who are economically disadvantaged. And so I would really urge you not to consider charging families to ride a bus to come to school. I don't have the state law in front of me. It could certainly be a state law, because that's another distractor to get kids into school and help them advance their own lives. And we need to make it easy for kids to get to school. And transportation, we bus everybody. And we do that purposely, so that kids get to school and they're in a safe place and that they're learning and growing. so I would urge you not to go down that
Well,
road.
if the
And
town,
plus, I'd have to look into what the state law is.
if Section 8 to house people of low income is available to people, why can't we have a Section 9 for transportation? You know, it doesn't seem logical that we have to continuously eat everything. As a grandparent, I got 2 grandchildren in school. I pay through the taxes, I pay their transportation. They're very happy to go to school with the school bus to stay out of their mother and father's car. But if I was asked to pay $100, $200 a year more, or $300 a year more for the thing, and they enjoyed it, and the ride was something, I would pay the $300 out of my pocket. Some way, one way or another, I would pay it.
But if only 50% could pay, then you'd have to pay 5.
Well, that's why I said the state has to get involved in that too. If they can give Section 8 money to people, why can't they do for the schools?
Mr. Dixon, I think you had a question too, and then prior to this.
Lost
But Mr. Finnemore, you do raise a point that most districts around us do charge students to play sports. Some charge them to ride the bus. Some charge them to park their car at the high school. Since I've been on the committee, and Mr. McCara, I think, has been on it a little longer than I can speak for a long, long time, we as a committee have always felt that it is our obligation as a community to provide a free education. Some may disagree with that, but we've always built our budget around not charging students, because we could do that legally, because obviously other communities may not be an enterprise fund, but we could charge a fee for students to ride the bus. We have felt that, again, it should be a free education, and to Mr. Becker's point, I don't know the exact law with regards to a sliding scale, because at some point, if 60% of our students are identified as high risk, then most of them probably would not have the ability to pay.
We've had this argument for years. I've been involved in politics in town for years, and recently, in the past 8 or 10 years, they're saying, I don't know what we did yesterday. Yesterday's over. What has to go is what's good for today. And if other towns are charging, and they find, if I'm a student and I have a car, and I want to park it in Boston, it's going to cost me $14 an hour. Why can't I pay $30 a month to the school to park my car? You have to fix the parking lot.
I would think, maybe those options are something if an override does not pass and we are seriously looking at, what we would have to cut rather than have a fee such as that. Maybe that's the time when we look at charging students for other fees.
That
But
would
like
be-
an override, it's something we have
That'd be
to
like
keep
a
on the front
permit
burner.
type fee if you, another sticker.
Right, yeah, and you're right, other communities do it all the time, so
Almost every community that I can think of off the top of my head around us does charge some type of fee. First of all, usually for athletics. Some have busing, and some have the parking for the kids in high school.
We, thank God, knock wood, have been over generous with our school. You spent thousands to go outside consultants for special ed children. I've seen it. You, person, a mother or father would come in and say, my child does not have a baseball glove. I've seen them issue baseball gloves, catcher's equipment. That not having the parent go out and buy all this stuff. The school has always seen fit to provide it, but there comes a point of saturation. And we have to let the people know that that point of saturation, maybe next year, maybe the year after. Like we're talking possible override in the next 2 years, we have to talk saturation of the school also.
Mr. Finnemore, if I may, there may be children that are going to school and not having a baseball glove or whatever it is and coming home from school with it, but I really doubt that that means that the school itself is taking money out of their fund to buy these things for these children. In many cases, myself included, I've seen children that are going without something, and those children come home with something from school. The school didn't pay for it. There are plenty of members of the community that are going out and buying things for kids because they know that they need it. So just going back to your point of kids not having the equipment that they need to play a sport, how can we then say that you need to pay money to ride a school bus?
Again, the state, if they can do Section 8, they can then pay for the school buses. That's where I'm coming from. If they can do a Section 8, they can do the same thing for school buses, a voucher for school transportation. Why not a voucher for school transportation? I run a campground. People come into me with a voucher to stay on a campsite. Why is the state giving them a voucher to stay on a campsite and not in an apartment?
If I can, I mean, I just think that we just heard how the state's not funding
Right.
education fully as it is.
That was one of the three criteria.
Particularly transportation. But I think the more important thing is that, as was said, we're talking about a community where, you know, there's a lot of disadvantaged families. And now if you're gonna say you have to pay to get your kid to school, those kids might not get to school, and then, you know, what are we really doing? Are we hurting the community a lot more than paying to get the bus there?
But you're
These
saying
kids are
from-
not going to school, they're gonna find other things to do, and it might not be the best things.
I didn't say we're gonna do it, I said we're gonna put it out there as a possibility.
But the state can't fund the things that they're already trying to fund.
And-
How are we gonna tell them to fund the bus?
And perhaps to change the thought and to mix this up a little bit, the least offensive of those three charges is the parking. We have no charges for students right now, but if there was, and it wouldn't bring in a lot of money, but it sets the tones that yeah, Webster does charge for certain services for students.
Well, again, this is a discussion, obviously,
Yeah,
for
but I'm just saying,
future school committees. I think Doug is absolutely right. If we look at next year's budget without an override, knowing that, you know, we're looking at serious cuts, I'm assuming that's a discussion that we're going to have, first of all, as a district leadership team, because they come up with the initial draft, and then ultimately as a committee, do we need to start incorporating some of these costs? Those are very difficult discussions we're probably gonna have in the next 9 to 12 months.
Well, I believe Mr. Willison said he would hope that the school could hold the 2 to 3% increase the next 2 years.
I don't think
It
it
is-
says that, but.
You said with a 3% increase, it would be this, with a 2% increase, it would be that. So in that actuality, you're saying if you stay at 3%, we're only gonna be short this much. If we stay at 2%, we're only gonna be
Yeah.
short this much. Which, we're not asking you to cut. Nobody's asking anybody here to cut. We're saying that before we can go out for an override, before you can sell an override to me or anybody else in the town of Webster, you have to be prepared to say, we're biting the bullet, and show that you're biting the bullet. So if you anticipate a 5% increase for next year and the year after, you have to physically show the people that that 5% increase can be cut if we get an override. Then, or we can sustain a 5% if we get an override. Then maybe you could sell an override. But if you're not willing to say, we're biting the bullet, and 3% is the minimum we can do, but 5% is actually what we need to educate your children, I think you could sell an override a hell of a lot better than just going out there and saying, hey, you know, other towns have tried it, we tried it twice. You have to give the people something that they're going to go to the ballot box and reluctantly press yes.
Based on Doug's numbers, we're gonna have that discussion next fall regardless.
We should have it now. Prepare the people now.
Can I ask a question? On the 4.2% increase this year, what was just salaries? Do we know?
Yep.
Do we have any idea what it might be for next year?
most of it was salary.
Yeah, most of it always is kind of salary.
It was 590,000 difference in salaries from 19 to 18.
Your total growth was what, 850?
3.74.
Out
3.74.
of the 4.2.
I'm sorry, Mike, is that increased salaries or increased salaries and increased teachers or staff? So the combination of
Total,
both?
combination of everything.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for you, but I would think that a 3% is probably not enough to even maintain the status quo.
That would be a local service budget.
It would be a cut.
It would be a cut. And I know these are difficult conversations. I will tell you that there's not a lot of fat in our budget in any way, shape, or form. And we're trying to do the best we can by reallocating our resources to build programs that really enrich the lives of the children that live in Webster. And that's our goal and our purpose. And our objective is to make Webster Public Schools help all of the children that it services. And we are looking at programming. And in order for any school organization to do a good job, you have to be in the mode of growing and looking at your programs. We don't want to step back and say we have to cut now something that we just started, because it hurts kids. It hurts programs and it hurts kids. And ultimately, these children are the Webster citizens of the future. And I always have the philosophy of pay now or pay later. We want them to be in our schools, and we want our schools to have the greatest programs around. And you know, I know I'm new to Webster and I'm just coming here. We have the potential here. We have all the pieces in place. We have supportive staff. We have a great administrative team. We have committed, caring community members who give without knowing, who help our kids in need. We have extracurricular activities which really help our kids form those relationships and connections to school. And, you know, I see great things for the district. But to think that we would have to cut really makes it difficult, because you come to the point where do you cut? What program is more important than another program? And, you know, our goal is to provide equitable opportunities for every single student who walks into our school, regardless of where they come from or how much money they make. That's our job and that's our mission. And I know we are the biggest line item in your budget, but we are for a reason.
You recall at the last meeting, I asked you a question about free cash, and you answered, you don't have free cash. I'd like to know how the town with a 1.6% increase can come up with $1,200,000 in free cash and split down the middle historically with the school every single year. Whatever free cash we get, we split down the middle historically for the past 25, 30 years. That free cash came out of town budgets, not out of school, because like I said to you, I've never seen the school turn in 5 cents to the town that can go into free cash. So we've historically been over supporting the school. But how long do you think we can do that? We have infrastructure here that's falling apart. Did you see some of the potholes out there?
I want us to be a team. I want to just make that really clear. I think we need to work together.
We always have worked together.
With regards to the free cash, isn't there some money that's coming in from the school?
The school department does contribute. We operate the Medicaid reimbursement program, so that brings in revenue to the town of Webster, about $450,000 a year, where the school fronts all that cost up front, and the town receives that reimbursement, which comes directly to the town. The school doesn't see that.
And free cash should be used for one-time expenses, usually capital going forward, so. I did, stepping back, we talked about stabilization for a little while ago. I had a question. So we're selling the Fillmore building, and originally that money was going to be set aside to pay down the debt for the administration offices. That gets a little, I have to keep track of it in a separate fund for the next 10 years, and it's a little bit of a pain. I was wondering if there's support for putting that money in a stabilization fund, just putting it as part of our stabilization fund.
Is it legal? I thought we had to put it into a building fund.
No, I mean, we're selling an asset so we can do anything basically we want with it. So rather than keeping it and paying down the debt for the next however long it lasts.
I'm sorry, but I thought every building or every asset that we own that we got rid of had to go into a, am I right, Mr. Miller? We used to have to put it in the building fund?
We used to put it in a surplus property, I think at one time. I think we sold a piece of property once on Cudworth Road.
Yeah. All right, so I think,
That's past practice as opposed to
Past
what's
practice.
required.
and all I'm saying is the original plan was to set it aside and pay down the debt on that building. I'm saying that gets a little hairy and I need to put it in the next town meeting warrant that's for next week. I was thinking it's a lot easier if we just put it all in stabilization fund. That increases that. And then going forward, it's $80,000 a year that will be added onto that budget. deficit, but at that point, if we really wanted to, we could take money out of the stabilization fund to pay for it. So if everyone's okay with that, that's what I'm gonna propose in the town meeting warrant.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not looking for a motion?
If
No,
it's
I'm not,
legal.
but I just, yeah.
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah.
Through the chair,
Cheers.
through the chairs. So, you know, it's just not the school department, but as a community, as a town, for the next 5 years, we really have to look at how we spend our money. You know, everybody is going to have to, sad to say, sacrifice. We have to realize that town meeting, 170 people out of how many show up, they're spending our money. You know, school department has to look at what they really need, the town. You know, it's gonna be, people that talk to me on the outside, you know, it's like, oh geez, we have no money, why do we need a new fire truck? Or how come we got the new library now and a new fire, police station? I mean, those are things we need, but the next 5 years, we're gonna really have to, do we really need some of the things that maybe our department heads are gonna ask for, put in a warrant and bring up at town meeting? We all know town meetings get stacked. I mean, it's a shame, but it happens, and a lot of money gets spent probably unnecessarily because of people's needs, what they want. And it's all of us that are gonna have to come up and say, you know, no, or use our heads and influence people on what to do the next 5 years. I mean, we just can't keep going. We're gonna be, you know, even if we do this, I don't see where you know, you haven't shown where the budget would be balanced, even doing,
You said earlier, you'd still be at least $500,000, $750,000
absolutely,
short.
so, you know, it's,
Without the override, I think your assumption was the override would have to come.
Right, and that, it didn't include the pension, adjusted pension schedule, but I'm not positive that's a good choice yet.
Do we have a list of debt retirement?
What's
And the
that?
health
Do-
insurance, we already have pushback on.
Oh, yeah, none of those are guaranteed, yeah.
Pension
And
has to
decreased
go to
growth, that's
override.
basically.
And the budget we're seeing now, you know, so those three options aren't even guaranteed to be available.
I agree.
Pension's a warrant article, correct?
Yeah, so the pension is a town meeting would have to dissolve the local retirement board to regionalize.
It's a town meeting decision?
We
Which
have,
is very, will not be very popular with the retirement board, obviously.
And the health insurance hasn't been very popular with the unions, correct?
That would be an understatement, yeah.
So, I mean, we're looking at 4 options, and right now, 4 options are.
None of them are, right, exactly.
if we put things on the warrant, that a lot of the people don't feel we need and get approved, they're never gonna get an override, never.
I think one of the issues is you're gonna see tomorrow night, how Dudley makes out. That's kind of I hate to say the canary in the coal mine, but, you know, the harbinger of things that might come, because I think I've heard through Dudley and Charlton that there's been a lot of support in the community, but you'll find out tomorrow. You know, I think Earl mentioned doing something with parking fees. I think we all have to think about every little piece we could do. You know, just a chicken scratch of, you know, if there's 250 students with cars at $200, that's $50,000. Well, at least it shows the community we're doing something, because it's a privilege to bring your car. Otherwise, you could take the bus, which we do. Of course, it would be more
We
buses.
won't charge you for that, though.
Yeah, it would be more buses, which people have to remember as well. And Neil, you're talking about buckling, you know, tightening the buckle. And we all have to do that. And I mentioned earlier about turning money back in, not spending, you know, what you have. But to me, the big question is, do the cuts come before the override, or does the override come before the cuts? It's always been the override comes, and then if we don't get it, then the cuts. And we as a town have had, I'd say we've lost some confidence from our townspeople because we haven't made those cuts. We asked for the override and we never really saw the pain. Now you can see the numbers. The pain is going to happen. I fear that, we won't be able to get the override because in the past we haven't done a good job of selling it, and then we're going to have to face that pain. Whether it's 50-50 on the school side, town 70-30, whatever the number is. So we've got a year to educate people and a year to figure out where can we show an effort. It might not be a lot of money.
Right.
I would say to the school committee, 50,000 might not mean a lot of money, but it's the intent. We're trying. I'm not saying charge students for the buses. I agree with you.
We were, years ago, not too many, 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were talking about doing no capital improvements unless we were retiring debt and taking that retired debt and put it towards a new capital improvement and maintaining the same status quo because the people were used to paying that money out anyway. Do we have a list of capital debts that are going to be retired in the next 5 years, and what capital improvements can we add to that list?
Yeah, there really isn't any coming off anytime soon. We've been adding
going
a lot.
on.
And so that's essentially the big problem next year. Yeah.
If I may, that's what's, all the capital improvements have all come to a head. So we have to pay the piper for the various things that we've gotten. And quite frankly, it's probably, it all hit at once, shall we say. To see the light at the end of the tunnel, I think you're being optimistic even in 3 years. But you can see it.
2022 would be, we're starting to see some light. Am I correct in that, Mr.
3 years is $1.5 million
Willie?
short. The shortfall grew, the deficit grew.
Yeah, it was growing every year.
It was $1.6 million or so in year 3.
Yeah, I can't remember when the fire station or the police station debt and stuff falls off. I'd have to look it up on the spreadsheet. But that's really the first relief.
That's a 20-year note on that.
20 years.
Yeah. So, maybe I'll go through those options and we can talk about next steps. So health insurance reform, I think I'm in a good position, well, as good as can be. So we've met, they have hired a consultant that is reasonable and easy to work with. So hopefully we can come up with options going forward. We will have to notify the GIC by December 1st if we are going to join with them or not. So in October-ish is when we're gonna have to hit that heavy, and hopefully we have been meeting all along, so when we get to that point, we all agree. So decreased growth in budgets, that's obviously just something we're gonna have to do as we prepare next year's budget. Adjusting the pension schedule, that, I've asked the actuary for projected cost plan. That, like I said, that needs to go to town meeting, so I could put it on this town meeting warrant. I don't think we'll have all the numbers before we sign the warrant next week, but if the numbers come back good, we can move forward with it. If they come back bad, we could just skip over the article at town meeting, or we could wait for October. Just problem with waiting for October is, ideally, you want to start this at the beginning of a calendar year. So if we wait till October, it's a little bit too late. And then the override, I would say I can meet with Ruth Ann and Monique, and we can come up with a plan. Ideally, I would like to have an override ballot vote probably in February, so if it doesn't pass, we're not in a huge rush, because like Dudley and Charlton, if they don't pass tomorrow, they have a lot of crunching to do in a month, so I'd much rather do it in February than April. But maybe we can come up with a plan and a game plan going forward.
Also, if I may, Mr. Administrator, a lot of people don't realize that the town of Webster, like a lot of other cities and towns, had a lot of unfunded mandates that we had, and it's cost us millions of dollars over the years. Or you get a short term, well, for this year, we'll give it to you with a very low interest, but then you get the higher interest comes in after that. For example, I think the filtration plant, but getting back to that, Michael, that I think the board took a vote that it would still continue the ice pigging and replacing some mains as needed. I think there was like a 3-for on that. So it's not just the filtration, it's a series of things to get Webster back
Right, so
with the right water, but it's not gonna take 1 or 2 years, which I understand that. But quite frankly, I think we started a couple years too late. We should have been online with the filtration. It's not any of our fault, so to speak, but it does exist. And that's another 10 million plus, plus, plus when you take it all into consideration, Mr. Chairman.
Right, I think when you consider, you know, we talk about putting a capital plan
Mm.
together, we don't have the money for it. I mean, take the water, for instance, you know, we haven't replaced pipes. And we have pipes looking like the way they're looking because we haven't had the money or the
Mhm.
desire to raise the rates to spend money to replace pipes. You know, it's the same thing as not spending money on capital items for the next 5 years. There's gonna be some need, but
Absolutely.
we have to buckle the belts and say, do we absolutely have to have it? The water has reached a point we absolutely have to have it. I don't think we've agreed to replace mains, but there are the
Well, some of the
500,000 that's-
pipes in some
the
areas.
The 500,000 that's, you know, Doug is proposing that we talk about at our next selectmen's meeting.
Yeah.
we'll
Mr.
do some of
Becker.
that.
In 1993, the Finance Board, the Board of Selectmen, discussed the water problems and the mains. And the superintendent at that time says, if you give me an enterprise fund, I can change the mains, especially down Main Street, which were approximately 125 years old. And we gave him the water enterprise fund. I haven't seen one main changed in the past 25 years with the enterprise fund, and that's originally how we sold the enterprise fund to the town meeting, right?
I wasn't there then, so
I
don't blame
was.
me for that one.
I was. It's a matter of public record. I
Okay.
was.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
we sold the enterprise fund. Mrs. Martell worked very hard at that, and we finally got it sold, and we never saw a main change. Where did all that money go?
Everybody asks.
Going back to the health insurance,
Yeah.
get some of the pushback. I mean, are they aware that saving this money through a change of health insurance is, you know, in their best interest budget-wise? I mean, those are the people that are gonna get affected ultimately if we're way off, so is that being stressed during these negotiations? I mean, besides
Right.
the, you know, the 300 we got back because they waived that, we were gonna be off this year.
Right, exactly, so,
Mr. Chair, I think that's one of our biggest problems in this town. Other than these people right now in this room, we're the only ones that see this. The word does not get out to the rest of the town.
And how
You
would,
know, it's even our budgets. I mean, since Mr. Willison's been here, we've had a very good detailed budget. Up to that point, the Webster residents didn't know anything. They were unaware of things.
but that always bothers me somewhat, because I'm only in my 4th year on this committee. That budget hasn't changed in format in the last 4 years from our school department budget.
I agree.
And we discuss it every meeting starting in January. I don't disagree, we have a public hearing, no one ever shows up, unfortunately. I think people, through the cameras and sometimes the good aspects of social media, know more. But we do struggle as a town, not only communicating what our needs are, and we also do this as a school district, but sometimes communicating all the positives that go on. And that's what, you know, this is building a routine and trying to do a much better job. But to get back to your question about health insurance, it's somewhat what Mr. Dixon said a moment ago. We can say if these cuts don't come in, if we don't see these cuts, these are going to be the potential layoffs, but they're not affecting this year. So obviously next year, this is the first time I've seen these numbers, obviously with the significant deficit projections. Any staff member who sits there and says, you know, well, these savings aren't really going to have any impact, that's not true anymore, in my opinion, moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, but I know the class sizes in Webster are significantly high compared to other towns.
No,
And
depends on the grade.
if they're not gonna switch to health insurance and try to save some money, and for example, we have to get rid of teachers or, whatever happens, those class numbers go higher. There's going to be more, pressure on the teachers that are there. It's going to make it more difficult to get their jobs done.
Well, this
So,
is,
I think that in these negotiations, it has to be pointed out that this is a huge savings. We're already in a deficit that's not saved. And, I'm sure everyone loves the doctor they have now, and they want to keep that doctor because they like their insurance. But if it's to save money and potentially save jobs and try to get this, balance somehow, it's a pressure point, and we have to push on it.
Yeah, I agree, and they know, they're aware to what extent is, yeah.
and that'll
I
vary
think
from
it could
person to person. In full disclosure, I'm on our town's plan. I was a teacher in the district, and I say to our colleagues all the time, you guys have no idea how good you have compared to what most private employees are paying for small and large businesses, so
And
I get it.
The people at the meeting are very well aware of the challenges. Doug explained that to them in the upcoming years about the deficits. And I think they're willing to listen. I think they understand. And the advisor that they hired was very upfront in saying, you're going to need to address this. This is a real problem. The town's going to have to take a look. I think it's just, it's nerve-wracking to know that your health insurance is going to change. They're nervous about the GIC and their ability to just change things and drop things so quickly and losing their coverage and, having their deductibles go up. So I think it's, you're paying for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they're nervous about the ability of the GIC to quickly just change insurances. And drop
Yeah, to their credit, I think they are open to actually picking up more costs
Yes.
to stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. I mean, that's what they already made that vote once. Overall, though, I don't think that they'd be willing to pick up enough to offset what it would really be to go to the group insurance commission.
Are those, I should probably know this, is that a decision that you can make on your own, or are those part of collective bargaining?
Yeah, so the board adopted section 21 through 23, which allows me to negotiate with all the unions to collectively, and they call it a PEC, a Public Employee Committee. So if we cannot agree on a plan moving forward, we have 30 days to negotiate it, and at that end of that day, we take it to a state board, and whatever the board determines, we have to look with both
Binding
management
arbitration.
and,
What is that committee, that PEC, is it a majority vote, or is it unanimous?
it's majority. And the state board, the arbitration, it's defined in law that if the GIC will save you, it's 5% over what plan design would be, then they will enroll you in the GIC, and we would definitely meet that criteria. So, to be honest, I don't know.
The binding would force
Would
us
force us to go to the
into
GIC.
GIC
But you can't,
based on
what they
past.
can't, what he doesn't have the authority to change is the percentage that we need to negotiate with the union, 25% to 95%.
Yeah, so-
So that is
Right,
something
so,
that he can't change.
yep, right now, we're at 75-25, and if we switch the GIC at 75-25, there would be some people that would save a lot of money, because they'd be on the lower HMO plans, and there would be a lot of people that would pay a lot more money, especially the retirees, because they are at a different contribution percentage. What I was trying to do was meet in the middle, so everybody's pays exactly, or roughly what they're paying right now, and it doesn't hurt anyone. But to do that, I would have to adjust from 75-25 to another number, 70-30 perhaps.
Did the dramatic decision and then reversal of the GIC hurt your negotiating ability?
I think that definitely causes them concern that there's an instability within the GIC.
But wasn't there going to be some legislative action to not allow that to happen? There was some talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it shows that they're willing to do whatever the unions say. So to me, I think they should be more comfortable because they'll actually listen when everyone puts their feet to the
Because
fire.
it backed off.
Yeah.
But that was somewhat very dramatic.
Yeah,
Somebody even say absurd. One vote.
it was I wouldn't have done it that way. for moving forward, or at least I'll work with Ruth Ann and Monique. Does it make sense for this group to meet again in a couple months to put together a plan for what an override might look like?
I think once you get through the budgets.
Yeah, town meeting.
In May, town meeting in May.
We've done that in the past.
It doesn't look like anything's gonna fall from the sky and help us. So those numbers are pretty solid, and then it means we have to do a really good job of communicating. And not have the à la carte menu like we did over the previous override, but if it's gonna be like Dudley Charlton did, you're gonna do it for our future, you're gonna do it for the schools. I would, just say it. We have to focus on one thing and let people know how important it is for that one thing.
And I think one thing, we had talked about it, touched on it when you met with the finance committee about the programs and efforts you're putting in place to be able to monitor them and make sure you're getting your return or getting what you expect to be getting out of those programs, and so that's important.
Before you can talk override also, do not threaten discontinuing service or layoffs, because historically, we've always threatened it and never occurred. And people say, the 11th hour, they'll get their money, don't worry about it. We have to get off of that wagon. The override is needed for X, Y, Z, and that's it. We don't have to say we're gonna lay off, we're gonna lose services, we're gonna do anything else.
Yeah, I think actually it would be, I agree with you. If you do that too many times, they're gonna call it a wolf, and they're not gonna believe you. So I would say, when we do it in February, we say this is the budget with it, this is the budget without it, and you choose what you want.
That makes perfect sense.
And then the key there is, it's a lot easier to talk to 170 town residents in a town meeting. It's much harder to talk to 12,000 voters. So, that's where the communication has to come in. And I think it's great to have this group, because we can all collectively give our ideas on how will we best communicate that. That's gonna have to, that plan has to be put together, that communication plan.
To your point, though, I think the numbers they've had at a lot of meetings was the projection of the 3 years.
Right.
Is that it's not turning. This
Right.
isn't just a one-year thing.
It's rolling.
It's compounding.
Okay, so.
Any other good news?
This year's balance, that's very good.
Yeah, which, it's been great to work with Ruth Ann, Monique, and Ted. For a while there, I was very stressed, and I can't really make up these numbers work, but they came together at the end, so.
We continue to be appreciative of everyone's support in the schools, and I think it's important that we continue to work as a team. And I do want to invite you all to come to the Empty Bowls celebration at our Bartlett High School on Friday night. The money will be, that we raise will be donated to the food pantries, and they're honoring our local safety firefighters and emergency responders. So I've never been, I'm looking forward to Friday night's event. The kids have been working really hard on making all sorts of sizes of bowls, so please bring your family and your friends and come to Bartlett High School. And I think the more you see what's going on in the school, the more you'll be able to understand what our purpose is and what drives us and gives us passion to create the programs that we need for our kids. So please stop by.
I'd like to take a minute to blow Mr. Willardson's horn. It's about time we got a town administrator with accounting ability. Thank God for small favors.
Thank you, I guess.
Did he call you small?
So.
I'll entertain a motion from the selectmen.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let the other boards.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Aye. I meant height, of course.
Thank you, Greg.